from new PMs is just like, am I doing well? I don't know. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what to do if you're ever in doubt. If you're ever wondering, what should I be doing with my time? I'm not sure if I'm using my time well. I'm going to give you some tips there. I'm going to share a bit about just like what is this role that we all signed up for and how it varies across companies. I'm going to teach you the 7 habits of highly effective product managers. You're also going to get to start to know some of the other PMs in this class so that you can start building a relationship and a network of other new product managers. And then we're just going to have time for a bunch of Q&A, whatever's on your mind. So let me start off with just like asking you in the Zoom chat, your first, I don't know, experiment of following Bo Meek's instructions. Just tell me in the chat, why did you become a product manager? I'm curious, what are all the reasons you all decided to get into this crazy, wild role? Ship amazing products, solving problems, exposure, interesting, super cool. Yeah, so just kind of share what else is top of mind. Make an impact, easing customer pain, great. Skin in the game, interesting. Career opportunities, these are great. Stumbled into it, cool. Handle ambiguity, okay, cool. What about, so Lisa, if you're up for it, I'd love to hear a little bit more about why you got into product management. I love your answer of feeling frustrated about your own product and wanting to fix it. If you can unmute yourself and just kind of expand on that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I started at my company as just like a general marketing person. So I was using the platform every day for business use and for on behalf of other clients. So I had 25 clients I was working with. And I probably spent half my day fixing bugs or hacking the system to try to get what I needed to get done on our own platform. So if I was feeling that as an employee, I couldn't even like imagine what our customers were going through, and like churn was starting to get really, really high, and we were entering like this phase of like, crap, we might not make it. And I was just like, I think I have ideas of how we can fix this, and that's kind of how my journey started.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing that. I love that just like feeling of empowerment. We're going to talk about empowered teams and feature teams a bit. And I love that you're just like, I'm going to go in there and fix it. I don't want to just like let this thing be as bad as it is. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. Cool. So while we're talking about this, I just want to kind of recognize just how hard this role is that we're doing, and just kind of like create a space of just being aware of just like how difficult this role is, and also just how hard it is to even like share that with people. It's often, you know, you're kind of like the leader of the team. You need to be strong, and it's hard to even talk to your team, to your other PMs, to even your manager, about just like how difficult this role is. And so something I want to do with this course and this community that we're building is just to kind of like be here for you all and help you through this journey that we're all on, knowing just how hard it is and how rarely people even know how hard it is from the outside. And so I just want to say that, but also not to start on a downer, it's also a pretty amazing freaking role. I don't know if I want to do anything else at a company other than be a product manager, and I'll talk a bit about my journey to product management. If you can actually share in the chat what else is like, what else is awesome about the role that gets you excited about being a product manager? I'd love to hear it, just kind of real quick. And as you're doing that, I'm just going to keep going, but these are amazing. Happy customers. I love that. I love how you guys think about this role. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about my journey into product management. It was pretty unusual, but I think most product manager journeys are unusual. It's kind of a strange role to get into. I started my career as an engineer at a company in San Diego. I went to school for computer science. I ended up getting a job at this company for 9 years called Webmetrics. We did website performance monitoring and load testing, kind of a boring thing, but I ended up staying there for 9 years. I was an engineer initially, and then I moved into management of engineering, and then I moved into the R&D role, or an R&D role at the company. And eventually I decided I wanted to start my own company. And so I did that. I started this company called LocalMind. I did that company for about a year and a half. I ran that company for a year and a half, not did that company. And we grew the company to about 5 people and ended up selling it to Airbnb in 2012. Not something I expected, but it ended up making sense, and joined Airbnb. So when I joined Airbnb, I was actually still an engineer. I stayed an engineer because that's what I was doing my entire life up until that point. But since I was the CEO of our company of 5, and we stayed together at the company, I ended up just doing all the PM duties of the team. I was in the PM meetings, I was coordinating timelines, I was communicating with stakeholders, I was doing road mapping and things like that. And at one point, the head of product pulled me aside and he's just like, Lenny, you should just become a product manager. You're doing all the PM work on the team. You should just do this job. And something you learn working at scaling companies is you can't just do like this weird hybrid role. You have to fit in a box. Eventually, you have to fit in a function. You have to report up to some functional leader eventually. And I was hoping to be this kind of hybrid engineer PM. I could end up doing that. So I decided to move into product, partly because I was not that amazing an engineer. Don't think I would have made it as an engineer, to be honest, at Airbnb, because I was not that great at it and I enjoyed the work. So I decided to become a PM. And looking back, that was probably one of the better decisions in my life. Stayed there for 7 years, worked on a lot of cool stuff. Some of the stuff I worked on helped launch the Superhouse program, worked on Instant Book for 2.5 years, and we're going to talk a bit about that product in this course, which also, if you're using Airbnb at all, you're probably very thankful for the ability to use Instant Book. And our goal was basically to make Airbnb all Instant Book, and we almost got there. Also revamped the review system, worked on that for a long time, making trip quality better. And then I spent the last few years of my career there working on host supply, getting more hosts onto Airbnb. Since leaving Airbnb, I work on this newsletter now that is all about product and growth and anything that stresses you out at the office is how I think about it. And then I also spent a lot of time in angel investing and advising. And what's interesting about that aspect is it gives me a really interesting perspective on startup product, how to build product, how to hire PMs, how to build your product team. And so all of that has informed a lot of this course and just my general thinking on the product management role. And that's essentially why I made this course. I always felt like I wish I could just point PMs to something where they could get all their questions answered about all the kind of fundamentals of product management. And I wish that I had something when I was starting out, because I had to learn the role from scratch when I was first starting. And so my hope is this kind of helps you make less mistakes, helps you learn more from the mistakes that you do make, and just makes you more confident and resilient as a product manager. But let me just say our first lesson is that you're not going to become a great product manager just by taking a course, just by reading blog posts or books or tweets. There's not going to be this like 1, 2, 3 step framework where you're like, cool, I learned this stuff and then I'm great. It reminds me a bit about Ben Horowitz's quote that there's like really no silver bullets usually to anything. There's only lead bullets, and that applies exactly the same way to product management. I think of becoming a great PM like I think about becoming a great athlete. You have to do this over and over and over and over. This is the best example of what I think it's like to be a new product manager, where you just keep trying, you keep failing, you keep getting back up again, doing it again. And over time you learn. But you're not going to get great by just doing this. You also need the right to build the right habits and to get the right support. And so this course is essentially your kind of Mr. Miyagi that's here to kind of point you in the right direction and guide you. But even more important is, I'd say, the community that we're building around this course, and all of you that are on this Zoom is just like your dojo is kind of how I would think about it. Is we're just like here to practice the stuff, make mistakes, learn from other people's mistakes, learn from your mistakes, and just get better together. And also just the coaches, to kind of keep stretching this metaphor. There's this amazing group of coaches that we've built for this course also that I think are going to make this course 10 times better. So I'm really fortunate to have all these folks. So big thank you to Kara, John, Adam, Lo, and JW for helping out with this course. And I think you've all got connected to at least one of them now. And so I'm excited for that element of this course. Okay, so with that, let's dive into just what is the job of a product manager. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because I want to get to more concrete stuff, but this sets kind of the foundation for the rest of the stuff we're going to learn. The way I think about the job of a PM, essentially there's 3 parts. And let me just read this out and then we're going to break this down. To me, the job of a product manager is to deliver business impact by marshaling the resources of your team to identify and solve the most impactful customer problems. So it's a mouthful. Let's break that down. Job 1, in my opinion, the most important job of a product manager is to deliver business impact. That's what the company is hiring you for, and that's why they give you these resources to build product, to deliver business impact. And your responsibility more than any other function on the team is to deliver impact to the business. And there's different kinds of impact. Could be increased growth, could be close more deals, could be make certain customers happy, could be reduce costs. These are all different examples of impact, but at the core, your job is to deliver impact. The second part of this is marshaling the resources of your team, which speaks to you're not actually doing any of this work yourself. You're not building the product. You're basically given a set of resources, designers, engineers, data scientists, researchers, and your job is to create leverage to help them be more successful and deliver business impact. And then the last part is, what are you actually doing concretely? You're identifying and solving impactful customer problems. And the word impact is there again, because part of your job is to work on the most impactful stuff. And so day to day, this is your job: identify problems, solve problems. And the rest of this course is going to help you get better at that. I always think of this quote by Archimedes that a PM is essentially this lever. Your job is to create leverage for the rest of the company to help them be more successful. So with that, just so I'm not talking forever at a time, I'm just going to create a little space for questions. If anyone has any questions off the bat about what we've been talking about or just general product management. And I think Jonah is going to help us with the questions.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Jonah. I'm just going to be here to help out with Lenny. So feel free to post your questions, as both mentioned, in the workshop questions channel that you all gave big thumbs up on. So, as we get more questions coming in, feel free to just throw some thumbs up on questions that you want to upvote. Right off the bat, Austin, I'm going to call on you to actually share your question with Lenny. If you could just unmute yourself and jump online.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering what a good example of leverage is, because I'm also a really big believer in leverage, and I've seen that work in my software development role, and I'm just wondering what that would look like in a product manager's role.
So we're going to talk a lot about that. The simple way to think about it is just how do you make the rest of the team more efficient? So one concrete example is what is slowing down each of your engineers and your team. What is going to come up soon that's going to stop your team from being able to operate? Like you don't have any more budget to spend, or your designer's about to be pulled to a different team. Anything that's slowing your team down, your job is essentially to let the team continue to move forward. So that's just like a very concrete way of thinking about leverage. Then there's like next level stuff of just like, how do you extract more genius out of each engineer? And how do you get your designer to work harder? And how do you get your researcher to do their research in a better way? That kind of thing. So it's essentially getting at unblocking and then making the most of each person, each team member on your team. That's kind of the way I think about it. Great question.
Thank you.
It looks like most of the other questions are going to be addressed later in the workshop too. There's nothing on what you just covered. So I think for sake of time, we can keep going for now.
Great. Cool. We're going to have plenty of time for questions. Okay. So the next topic I want to cover is just how do you know if you're doing a good job as a PM? I find that most new PMs have no idea if they're doing a good job because the feedback loop is so long on product management. And it's hard to know in the moment, like, is this good? Is this bad? So I want to give you some tools to think about if you're doing a good job. Let me first ask you all in the chat, if you can just share, how do you know in your current role, or if you're moving into product management, how do you think about if you're doing a good job or not? What do you look at? Stakeholders are happy. Great. Rushi, that's a really good one. You're going to notice that come up later. Will, teams are feeling heard. Great. These are great. Ask for feedback. Customer emails are coming in. Improving metrics. Lack of fire drills. These are great. Okay, you guys are all over it. These are amazing. Okay, great. So these are amazing, and there's a lot to learn from this amazing set of answers. So we're going to actually come back to these. So let me first talk about just like at the minimum. So I'm going to talk about the minimum bar and then what a great product manager looks like. So at the minimum, what's interesting about just like the minimum bar for a good PM, in my opinion, is just be helpful to the team. Coming back to Austin's question, if you can create some leverage, if you can create some way for the team to be a little bit more successful, you're actually delivering value to the team. And just to memify that, here's kind of the bar you have to cross as a new product manager, is just like get over the bar of you're not pulling time and resources and energy off the team, you're actually helping them be more successful. And if you're ever in doubt, if you're ever wondering, what should I be doing? Like, am I doing the right thing? Just look for ways to be helpful. And so let's talk about what that could look like. Let me ask you all first, what are just like small and big ways that you can be helpful to your team? What comes to mind? Pizza. I love that, Kevin. That's like the bring the donuts approach, but with pizza. take notes, unblock them. These are amazing. Communication, SQL queries. Okay, great. Subject matter experts, dog fooding, giving engineering clarity, communication. Amazing. Okay, these are excellent. So I'm going to share a list that I've had, and there's a lot more in this chat that I would also look to. And what I would do is just like look at this list, and I'm going to talk through it briefly, and look at what's in the Zoom. And I'm going to actually send you this list after the workshop, so you can have this handy if you're ever wondering what should I be doing. And just look for ways to be helpful to the team if you're ever wondering what should I do with my time, or I'm just not sure I'm providing a lot of value. Here's some bunch of ideas. So yeah, a lot of people mentioned take notes, organize priorities, unblock blockers, get people talking who aren't talking, give quiet people a chance to share, bring just like positive vibes and energy. That's worth a lot on a team. So just kind of, again, the pro tip for you is if you're ever feeling like I'm not sure if I'm doing enough or I'm not doing a good job, just always come back to this very simple minimum bar of just be helpful, find ways to be helpful. Cool. Okay, so that's like the minimum bar. How do you know if you're doing a great job? So what I did is if you work at a large company, you've seen these kind of things. These are essentially your career ladders. And like the real answer is you should spend time with your career ladder at your company if you have this and understand what success means for your role. But a lot of times they're like very vague. They're still in work in progress. A lot of companies don't have these things. So what I did is I looked at about 30 that I collected privately, which I sadly can't share, but people sent me a bunch of examples. And I tried to suss out if you could just pull out the bare bones, like what are the simplest things to think about to be successful as a product manager. It turns out there's three buckets of things that you should be thinking about. And Adarsh actually may have guessed the first one. So there we go. Look at that. Adarsh is one step ahead of us. So you're gonna notice a lot of pyramids in this course because I find that most things often build on each other and it's a nice way to remember stuff. So this is our first pyramid and I'm gonna share essentially the three things that I would be thinking about of this is what you need to be doing a good job at. The first is your team's impact. So to me, again, coming back to the job of a product manager, your job most fundamentally is to help the business do what it's trying to do, deliver impact to the business, and to provide leverage. That's a big part of the job. And I'd say, again, more than any other role in the company, on the product team or at the company is to provide to provide impact to the team. So something I just want to plant in your head is if you're ever wondering, am I doing a good job and what could I do better? I would always come back to how do I help the team have more impact to the company? And this is going to come up again and again. The second element that you want to get right is unlike a CEO at a company, which PMs are often compared to, is it actually matters that people want to work with you and respect you and see you as doing a great job. So for a PM to do well, you have to deliver impact, but you also have to make sure stakeholders are happy with your performance. And it doesn't have to be everybody, but generally people have to feel like, oh, they're doing a great job. And where this feedback comes from is 360 reviews, peer feedback, just like, ad hoc emails that your manager gets, things like that. So that's an important element of being a PM. I think it's for the best, but sometimes people may be unhappy about that. Like, man, I'm just driving goals. Why do people have to like me? But it is important. As an example, there was a PM actually at Airbnb who just hit his goals every time, kept delivering impact to the business, but he was just like very abrasive. People didn't really want to work with him. He was like very non-collaborative. He wanted to just kind of make sure his team succeeded and wasn't that helpful to any other team. And he did okay, but he was always very limited by how far he could go and how fast he could be promoted. So that's an important lesson there. And then the third element is your actual individual contributions to the success of the team, to the team in general and the company in general. This is kind of the layer that separates you from project managers, where people are looking to you to actually contribute your own ideas, specifically to things like the strategy, the vision, ways to operate more successfully, ways to make the team more successful. People are going to look to you to see if you've actually contributed individually. And you'll find this on all the career ladders is this person contributing to vision? Are they helping us define the goals? Things like that. So getting even more concrete, here's just like what doing great as a PM looks like. and this is great. You don't have to like do all these things to be doing a good job, but just to give you kind of the high bar. You got to hit all your goals and deliver impact to the business. On that note, sometimes you hit goals, but the company doesn't actually care that much about what you're doing, and that's going to hurt you in your career. And so it's important that you're hitting goals and delivering impact that the company cares about. That 90% of stakeholders are happy with you. This is just kind of to the point that not everybody has to love you. It's okay to piss people off as a PM. It's part of your job almost. One of my managers always said that if everyone likes you, you're doing a bad job as a PM because you're not pushing people hard enough and you're not doing things that are hard and that need to be done. So I'm going to say 90% is a good bar to set. And then at the top is what are critical contributions you've made individually to the team? And here's like a little checklist that I will send you also after the workshop. So around hitting goals, ways to tell if you're doing well. Is my team's work directly impacting the business? Are we hitting important goals that matter to the company? Is my scope growing? Around satisfaction, do other team members want to work with you? Are people impressed with just like how well your team is performing? Are you getting just compliments randomly emailed to you, or is your manager getting compliments? These are signs that your stakeholders are happy with how you're performing. And then in terms of critical contributions, like you just need to think about, have I contributed something important and unique to the vision and the strategy or the roadmap? Are you seen as a leader? And would my teammates be upset if you left? That's a really interesting one. So again, I'm going to send you this so you can look at this after the workshop. But these are little checklists that you could think about like, okay, I'm doing like 7 of these. I'm probably doing a great job. Okay, so we're actually going to take a little, we're going to do a little breakout session now, which means you're going to get to meet other fellow students in this course and work on a couple questions here. And I will go through let me go through the questions, and then I think I'm going to turn it over to Jonah. So here's the instructions. Okay, so I think you'll be in like 4 or 5 people per group. So what you should do is just pick someone to go first, start with whose birthday is next, introduce yourself, tell them your name, your company, how long you've been a PM, and then just share 3 things. Why did you become a PM? What does success look like in your current role? As far as you know, what do you think success looks like? And then just what are ways you found to be helpful? And that's it. You're gonna have 10 minutes. And so I'll see you back here when you're done.
So I'm just going to be breaking you all up into rooms. You'll see a little dialog box pop up. So you can, when you see it, just click join and you'll be going into your room for 10 minutes, like Lenny said. And just at the 2-minute mark, I'm just going to give you a warning just so we can get a good round of introductions and then bring you back into the room. So enjoy, have fun, say hi to everyone for us. And we'll have the questions in the dialog box just to make sure, in the chat box to make sure you know everything that you want to talk about. Hey, were you able to join into your meeting rooms? Looks like everyone is.
Everyone here, click join breakout room if you haven't already. This is going to happen, Jonah. And by the way, this is where we pause the recording too. So
Okay.
I'm gonna, you can do it.
Example, like QAing features or, you know, getting pizza or trying to get customers to cut scope, things like that. Just like anything we can do to be helpful and kind of like having a very broad view of what that means.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's a really good example of just being helpful, is just like being the glue that keeps everything together. Something I haven't shared yet, but just like the PM has this like strange responsibility where they're responsible for the success of the team, even though they're not like actually managing anyone, and doing things like you just shared, like getting pizza, just keeping people happy is such an important part of the job. So that's awesome. And it's like it's such simple things, but nobody's going to do it if not the PM. So that's great. Okay, we're going to keep going. That was great. Thank you all for sharing that. Okay, so we're going to chat a little bit about just like how the PM role differs a bit across companies, because this is an important concept to think about in case you're moving to different companies, in case you're thinking about getting into the PM role still. And the way I think about this is there's kind of this spectrum. At one end of the spectrum, you're actually the mini CEO of the company, and you're kind of this general that just tells everybody what to do. At the other end is you're like, I think his name's Kenny on 30 Rock, where you're essentially the project manager. And you're just kind of told, hey, build this feature, go do that, go do this. And in the middle is the way I think about this is, and this is how most PMs function, is you're kind of the team captain. You're like technically the same as every other player on the team, but you have a bit of more influence because the team trusts you and kind of sees you as their de facto leader. And so this is how the PM role works at a lot of companies, but I'm going to share a little bit about, IC PMs, exactly. Ardarsh mentioned that, so I'm just talking about IC, individual PMs, especially new PMs. So I'd love to actually hear from you all in the chat. On this spectrum, where do you feel like your teams and PM teams influence lies? Are you closer to the mini CEO? Are you closer to the project manager? I'm curious why this is. Cool, these are great. Oh wow, someone's got a 5 there. Wow, a lot of 5s here. Very unusual. Great, so these are great. So isn't it interesting just how varied this is and how much influence PMs have and how that varies across company? I think a lot of times we don't realize that because we're always in this one place and we think that's how PM works everywhere. But it turns out obviously not true. Wow, 3.4, very precise GP. So kind of diving into that a little bit more, I did the survey that I sent in the pre-reading where I asked about 1,000 product managers where their company falls along the spectrum. And interestingly, Zynga is like at the far end on one side where PMs have a lot of power and influence over what happens. They're essentially the general. At the other end of the spectrum, Apple is a good example where you're almost not even a product manager at Apple, at least according to what I've learned. You're more of a project manager. And so what's also interesting is most PMs are in this middle ground where they have more influence, but not as much as the general. So the reason this is important is coming back to a little bit of Marty Kagan's language. I think that was in the pre-reading also to read about empowered product teams. So this group here, where you actually have roughly the slightly more power, is the way to describe that is you're an empowered product team, which essentially means that you're not just being told what to build, you can inform what's being built. You can inform the strategy, you can inform priorities, you can inform the vision. And even though here, most of the companies fall into this bucket, this was mostly like modern tech companies. A lot of people work at a lot of other types of companies, and there's actually a huge number of companies that are what's called feature teams, where you're essentially building things you're told to build. And it's actually really important that you know where your company fits along the spectrum, because one, it'll tell you what skills to focus on. If you're working at a company where your job is to just ship stuff that you're being told to ship, you want to get better at, say, execution and collaboration. If your company is more in the empowered quadrant, you want to spend a lot more time on strategy and vision and being able to, and customer insights, understanding what to build. So in your homework, you're actually going to have a little assignment to think about this and to map where your company sits. But an important point I want to make is a lot of people think they work at a company where they're not an empowered product team, but it turns out a lot of times you can create that power as a really great product manager. You can help convince the company that they should listen to you more than just, here, build this feature. There's a lot you can actually do. This isn't just like be a victim of the way the company works 100%. There's a little bit, you can empower yourself basically. And so I just want you to keep this in mind if you're finding you're working at a company that's just like, no, ship this feature. I don't want to listen to your thoughts. And the way to do this is just like come up with great ideas, help convince them, help show success, rally people behind an exciting idea that you have. Those are some ideas. We could talk about that more in Q&A. And again, when your homework assignment is going to be, think about where your company fits along the spectrum. Okay, our final lesson for today, and then we're going to get to some more Q&A, is to talk about what just makes a great product manager. And it's actually really simple. I think a lot of people overthink this. So we talked about the job of a product manager. A great product manager just does this consistently and reliably. That's all it is, in my opinion. Just do this again and again and again. You can screw up sometimes. You don't have to do this 100% of the time, but if you can deliver business impact, by marshaling the resources of your team to solve customer problems again and again and again, you're doing great. That's a great product manager. So that's something to think about, is just like a lot of this job is just doing this again and again and showing that you can do it and delivering success. Okay, how do you actually do that? The way I think about this is there's essentially two parts, two things you want to build to become a great product manager: great skills and great habits. Let's talk about the great habits first. I'd love to hear actually from you all, just in the chat, what are some habits of great product managers? What do they do differently? Detail-oriented, great, over-communicate, organized, great listener, metrics-driven, documentation, positive energy. These are amazing. You guys are all over this. Great communication, ask 5 whys. Nice one. Saying no, great. These are awesome. I love these. So whatever, as you see this chat coming through, see if there's anything that just stands out, like, oh, I want to build that habit, because these are awesome. And feel free to keep going. What I've thought about this myself, and I've come up with what I think are the 7 most important habits. I'm sure I'm missing a lot, and there's a lot of habits you should be building, but to me, these are the most important. So I'm just going to share them. The first is you're unceasingly just hunting for blockers. We talked about this a bunch already. Your job is to unblock the team and help them be more successful. And so if you build a habit of just like looking, like this little magnifying emoji guy, if you're just like looking for things that are slowing the team down, or like designers, engineers, data scientists, you're going to be successful as a PM. 2, you're ruthlessly prioritizing both your time and your team's time. You're always just like looking for ways to be more efficient, for the team to be more efficient, for you to use your time more efficiently. 3 is you amplify the success and contributions of your team. You want people to see you as a leader, as someone that's going to help them do better in their career. And the more you help highlight and amplify people's success, the better you're going to do as a PM. 4 is you anticipate what's coming around the corner so that you can be prepared. One of the habits of a great PM is just being prepared and having more time, spending more time on something than anybody else, because then you end up doing a lot better at that thing. And looking ahead is a really important element of that. So what I always try to do is just like, what's my manager going to ask of me in the next week? What is the founder going to want us to work on in the next quarter or 2? What is my engineer going to ask me in the next couple of days? And think about, how do I just start getting ahead of that stuff? 5, frequently remind team members of how their work connects to the vision and the mission. People get a lot more excited working on something that helps the mission that they bought into when they joined the company. And a great habit is just always remind them, hey, this little feature here, here's how it's going to help us deliver this mission. And it's easy to do. You just kind of just find opportunities to do that when you're kicking off a project, for example. 6 is, it's really important that you have a point of view. A lot of new PMs think that they're just there to coordinate other people's ideas and bubble their ideas to the top. I find it's actually really important that you have your own point of view, but loosely held, where you could change your mind based on your information. So something I'd encourage you to do is just, when you're coming into a decision or you're coming into a discussion, is have your perspective. Here's what I think we should do, because it forces you to think through it a little more deeply than just, okay, what does everyone think? Let's all align on the most popular idea. And then 7 is, you just never drop the ball. A lot of the PM role is actually touches on just like a general seed I want to plant in your head of roughly 2 things that every great PM becomes great at. There's kind of like these 2 things that I'm going to come back to again and again and again in the course. And these are kind of like broad themes. The first is you want to start building this aura as a new PM that you've just like got this. Everything that is put on your plate is either done really well, it's done on time, or if it's not done, people know why it's not done. And they aren't shocked that like, oh, this thing got dropped. The reason that PMs get promoted and move up the ladder at a company is people feel like they could just assign them something and it's going to get done. And again, if it's not done, they'll know why. So this is going to be a recurring theme, is starting to build this aura about yourself that you just like got this. Whatever is on your plate, you've got this. And then the other is that you're just always looking for ways to move the team forward. You're always looking for ways to help the team continue making progress, getting things out the door, driving impact, making customers happy. So these are just like 2 little seeds I just want to plant in your head. You don't have to think about this too much right now. And just a preview of one of your homework assignments is going to be to study some of the best PMs that you know and think about what are they doing differently? What are they doing great? Okay. So again, here's the 7 habits, just to kind of put this up on the screen for a little bit. And I'm going to send this to you in the post-workshop reading so that you could just look at this anytime you want. Cool. Okay. So now let's talk about skills and the skills of a product manager. These come from, again, me spending a ton of time just looking at all these ladders and career frameworks and things like that of PMs. If you just try to like simplify, what are the most important skills that new PMs need to build? It turns out there's 5. And so I'm going to share what they are. And it turns out they're also the next 5 workshops. Each of these skills is going to be a workshop. What do you know? Okay, again, a pyramid. And the reason, again, it's a pyramid is these are going to build on each other. I like Adarsh just always predicting what it's going to be. Look at that. I love it. Okay, so at the bottom, to me, the most important skill of a product manager to develop is communication skills. In my opinion, every other skill that you build as a PM builds on that skill. Why is that? Because your job is communication, writing emails, writing documents, presenting in meetings, running meetings, just talking to people in the hallways, things like that. And so more than any other role on a product team, the ability to communicate ends up being really important. And so the next workshop is going to be focused fully on that. And we're going to talk about the modes of communication. I'm going to help you get better at each of the modes of communication, for example, email or documents. I'm going to share a couple strategies of just getting better at all business communication that are going to help you in any medium. We're going to talk about the Minto pyramid and the SCR framework. And I'm just going to share a bunch of tactics and frameworks to get better at communicating in business. Okay, so that's the first skill. The next skill is collaboration influence. We talked about the role of a PM is like very strange. You're not actually in charge of anyone, but you have to get everything done for the team. And thus your ability to collaborate and influence becomes really important, and especially influence. And so in a week from now, our workshop, we're going to spend a lot of time on how to collaborate more effectively. I'm going to share a bunch of, actually 7 tactics to become a better influencer of people around you. And then we're just going to go through a bunch of examples of collaboration done well and not well. Execution. So communication, collaboration, influence, and then execution. If you think about just like, what is your job in the very bare bones? It's to get stuff out the door and ship product. And thus execution is extremely important, as I imagine all of you already know. And so we're going to learn in that course is things like effective road mapping, running meetings, prioritization, unblocking blockers, the art of the deadline, and how to create a predictable cadence for your team, which becomes really important to kind of do the job of a PM the way I described, where you're doing it consistently and reliably. The next course is going to focus on, basically we're going to shift from how to build product to what to build. And that is rooted in customer insights and understanding what do people need you to build. And so we're going to spend an hour talking about how to extract accurate and important insights from your customers, which will then inform the last piece of our workshop, which is strategy and vision. And this sits on top of all these other skills that you build as a PM. And so in this course, we're going to look at what is a good strategy, how to build a good strategy. We're going to share a bunch of templates and frameworks and examples of good strategy and bad strategy. And then we're just going to practice a bunch of them. And that's basically the course that we're going to be going through over the next few weeks. And to reinforce some of these skills, we're going to have a couple special guests join us. So at the end of our course, Jackie Bavaro is going to join us for a Q&A focused on strategy and vision and how to become a senior PM. We're going to talk about like what it takes to level up from a new PM to a senior PM. And then this week, we're going to have Shreyas join us for an AMA, and we're going to talk about what makes a great PM. And this is going to be an AMA, so you all can submit questions, and we'll just go through whatever questions you have for Shreyas, who, if you don't know him, he's a PM at Stripe, but he's also just like a prolific writer and sharer of knowledge about product. And so I'm really excited to have him join us. And finally, I just want to share these lectures are just kind of the starting off point for this course. There's a lot more to this course than just this lecture. I kind of think of this lecture as maybe like the tree in the center of each of these topics. And then there's all these branches that are going to come out of it. Specifically, lectures, in addition to lectures, there's going to be the homework. There's going to be these coaches that you've got assigned. You're going to have conversations with your peers. We got the Slack group, these guests, and then just like doing the work as we're doing these lectures. This is all kind of how it all builds together. And I think this is what makes cohort-based courses so interesting, is you have all these modes of learning and communication, and they kind of feed on each other. And the goal is kind of turn you from this into something more like this as fast as we can in the time that we have, and with the community that we're building around this course. And so let me just do a quick recap, and then we're going to get to Q&A, whatever else is on your mind. Okay, so what we learned today, that you won't become a great PM just by taking this course, but you will with all the other things that we're talking about, and then just doing the job. We talked about just like the minimum bar of being a good PM. And again, it's just to be helpful. And we looked at all the ways that you can be helpful. Take notes, consolidate team meetings, unblock blockers, these kinds of things. And I'll send you this after the workshop. We talked about the job of a product manager, and more specifically, what makes a great product manager, doing this again and again and again. We talked about what to look at to understand if you're doing a good job. Is your team delivering impact? Are your stakeholders happy? Are you individually contributing something to the team? And then I gave you a bunch of checklist items to think about. Okay, am I doing these things? How do I know if I'm doing these things? Here's a little list for you. We talked about how the PM role varies across companies and how different this role is. And as we saw in the chat, just like such a widely varying role across companies. We talked about what makes a great PM, which are a combination of habits and skills. We talked about the 7 habits of highly effective PMs. And then just the 5 core skills that I would focus on building as a new product manager that we're gonna learn through the rest of this course. Again, I just wanna say, you don't have to like remember all this stuff. I'm just like sharing a lot. And I imagine a lot is just like gonna fly by, and that's okay. Let this just like wash over you through the many ways that we're gonna go through this course, and just doing it. This is how it all starts to kind of set in. So don't feel like you need to like, oh my God, I'm missing this thing. I can't apply this thing. Just let it just like wash over you. And that's okay. You know, there's a lot of information that's going to come at you. Don't worry about it. And that's today's workshop. Let me ask you in the chat, what's one thing you're going to take away that's sticking with you right now? Share in the Zoom chat. And then we're going to move into Q&A. Be helpful. Love that. Be more helpful. I got this. Oh, I love these. Build an aura. Great. Be helpful is the key. Yep. Oh, I got this aura for sure. I love that. Prioritize. I got this. These are great. Thank you for sharing. This is great. Cool.
Right on.
Let's switch to some Q&A.
Yeah, so I've been tracking these questions and they are flying in. So there's a ton of great stuff. A lot of the content that we're going to cover over the next couple weeks also is going to be covered. So definitely going to try and keep these questions focused. I am going to share in this Zoom chat box just a couple of the names that we're just going to call on shortly. So Brian, I'm actually going to start with you. Brian Shumway, if you can unmute yourself and ask your question around kind of that shift from feature team to empowered product team.
Yeah, so if we feel like we're in, you asked a good question about, is our organization one that's more empowered product teams or feature teams? I feel like I've identified where my organization is, and it's not on the empowered product team side. So how can we help our company shift from feature team to empowered product team? Or is that just a sign that we're not in a place where we're going to be able to work in that sort of way, and maybe it's time to look elsewhere?
Such a good question. So Marty Kagan, if you know of him, he just like focuses so much on this topic. So answer 1 is I would read his books / his blog, where he spends a lot of time on this. And I'm never going to give you as good an answer as him. But so that's 1. 2 is I think there is a bit of like, it's very hard to change. I think a lot of the reason companies are feature teams is often the business is not differentiated and successful because of the product itself. It's often more like another function is basically more important oftentimes, like sales or marketing or sometimes engineering. So if that's the case, that's very hard to change. And it's going to be hard to convince the company like the product team should drive the ship because they're just not the most important product team at the company. So if that's the case, and this is actually going to be your homework to think about this, that's very hard. And I would think about changing, not to upset anyone. But 3, things I would try to do. One is just like show the value of your team. And I think it's important that the founder is on board. This is like probably the most important thing is make sure you can convince give the founder a chance to just like see this and then try to change their mind. Like, look at all these other companies that are product driven. Look how well they're doing. Here's the reason that we should think about being more like this. And then I think you just need the kind of leadership that can make that change. So I think those are probably the 2 most important, but it's hard.
Cool. Thank you so much, Brian, for the question. Emily, if you could unmute yourself and share your question.
Sure, thank you. My question is, what should you do when you identify a high value problem that doesn't align with the company's overall business priorities? The use case I'm thinking of is, for example, working towards a solution that solves a significant customer pain point or user pain point, but isn't necessarily a short-term revenue driving solution, for example.
I love that question. So I'd say the bad news is that there's a reason that the company has a strategy and a plan. And it's important that that exists because it tells you what you should be doing and not be doing. So in most cases, your best shot is shifting the strategy to make that priority important. Otherwise, if you're the leader of this company, your job is like, let's stay focused on what we think is the most important and impactful work. And the point of that is to stay focused. And as much as there's all these other things that you can do, you're essentially trying not to do them because it's hard enough to do one thing well. So I think that's the root of that. But while that's true, so one is you try to connect what you're doing to that vision and strategy to help them see, okay, this is actually going to help that. Alternatively, you can make the case this is still important, or this is even more important than what you thought was the most important thing, and kind of make the case for that. But I will say often it's probably not, I don't know the specifics of this, but often it's better off not to be working on something that isn't directly driving the current vision and strategy. And then I guess you could just like wait for the next planning cycle. I don't know if you guys do planning cycles, but that's when you make these cases, in my opinion, when you're rethinking resourcing and priorities. It's like, hey, we should really work on this thing. Here's why.
Thank you so much, Emily. I really appreciate the question. Keep the questions coming. This is great. I love that everyone's contributing to and answering other questions. That's great.
I love that. That. Please keep doing that. I definitely don't have all the answers, and the more we can all help each other, the better this is all going to go.
Yeah, and this is what your squads are for too. So after this all closes down, the conversation continues in Slack. So I'd love to call Pan up just to kind of share your question on delivering business value.
Hi. Hello.
Hi, Pan.
My question is how to deliver business impact and what to focus on first.
The way I think about it simply is just like, what is the company prioritizing right now? Like, what are their North Star metrics? What do they consider important for knowing if the business is doing well? Usually it's like revenue or bookings or new customers or something like that. So I would look to what do the founders and the leaders of the company consider important? So let's say, for example, let's use Airbnb as an example. The number of bookings that happen every year was the North Star at Airbnb. And so what you want to think about is, what can I do on my team that's going to help drive that metric as much as I can? And the more connected what you're doing is to that metric, the more obvious it is that the impact you're delivering is important. And it's actually considered impact because that's what the company cares about. So I would kind of trickle down from what the company is perspective is on what they want to drive as a business. Is that helpful, or is there something below that question?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Although the subsequent question is, because product have so many things to do in a day, So like how do you manage to do both your routine work and also driving impacts? It's like
I
how do you
see.
integrate it?
Got it. I wouldn't think like you don't have to drive impact every day or every week. The way I would think about impact is like whatever goal cadence you have. So if you're working on like a quarterly cycle, what is the impact we're going to drive this quarter? So don't feel stressed that like every day I need to be showing impact. That one's more broad and long term. So more about just like every month show some progress and hit your goals is a simple way to think about it. Yeah. So don't feel like you have to be doing that every day.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Pan. Melvin, if you could chime in with your question on building leverage.
Yeah, thanks. So my question was, how do you build leverage when you're first starting out? So when you're not like yet proven and you're obviously working towards building that, what are kind of like the key things that you should be focusing on right off the jump?
So I think maybe the way you phrased it is maybe why it's a little confusing. Is I wouldn't think about building leverage. It's not like you need to build leverage over other people. It's more that you want to provide leverage to the team, which is essentially how do you make the team more successful? How do you help the engineers move faster? So it comes back to just ways to be helpful. How do you help engineers not waste their time by having clear specs? How do you make sure that the right people are talking that are maybe gonna otherwise have a confused kind of plan about what they're building? How do you get the right resources? Like you're missing, say, a data scientist on the team. And if you could add a data scientist, everybody would move faster because you could make better decisions. So that's the way I think about it, is like what's something you can do to just help everybody else on the team move faster, work better. And that's kind of the leverage. That's like the lever you would pull. Like with Melvin on the team, look at this team operate now. Look, we're moving so much faster. Our meetings are going better. We're hitting our goals. That's the way I would think about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks, Melvin. Just on that kind of topic, Josh, if you want to chime in on getting ongoing feedback, I'd love to kind of have that question come up here.
Yeah, hey Lenny. So my question is about
Josh.
getting ongoing feedback from your team or your squad, especially considering they don't report to you, so you may not be having ongoing one-on-ones. One thing I've often thought about is what's the best way to get feedback, especially since I feel developers may be scared of giving feedback they may feel could be attributed back to them as well.
So you're asking giving feedback to the engineers or getting feedback for you?
I'm also getting feedback from the engineers, but I guess, yeah, question does go the other way around.
Got it. Let me add one more answer to Melvin's question that I thought of as you were asking, and then I'll answer that question. So I think Melvin, your question is like, as an UPM, what can you actually do? And a quick trick is just ask everyone on your team, what could you do to help the team run better? And just make a list and then just work on those things. Like an engineer might say, oh man, we keep getting these like short notice jobs and we weren't ready to work on this thing, or we don't know how to keep track of bugs. Just like collect that list and then just take a couple and just find ways to make the team run better.
Thanks. That's super tactical. That's awesome.
Okay, cool. Got one. Okay. Sorry, Josh. So you're worried that engineers aren't going to give you honest feedback about your performance?
Yeah, well, obviously you have retros that we have, but that's more of a group environment. So it's how do you create a space for that personal feedback without necessarily having one-on-ones with every person in the team?
I see. So retros are really cool and I highly recommend doing them. And it's great that you're doing them. If your question is like, how do you get people to be honest in a retrospective / postmortem? The trick I use is just make it very clear. This is like a blameless, honest conversation about how to get better. We're not going to blame anyone. We're not going to find fault. We're just trying to get better. And so the format I like to use in a retrospective is you start with just what are the facts? What happened with this project? Shipped on this date, shipped this, these people worked on it. Here's the impact we had, unambiguous facts. Then you get to what went great. What do we want to keep doing the next time? And then you get to what could have been better. And then just remind people again, we're not here to blame anyone. We're just here to figure out what could go better. And I find that brings out a lot of honesty. So that's the retrospective approach. If you're looking for just like feedback from the engineers about how you're doing, do you do like performance reviews and do that like that kind of cycle?
Yeah, but that would be with their direct manager.
I see. So you're not
yeah.
getting feedback. I see.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like the simplest thing, you should just ask them, hey, I'm looking for feedback, and you fill out this form and you can make it anonymous. You could talk to their manager, ask their manager to ask them, hey, can I get feedback on my performance? You can make it anonymous. Those are two tricks.
Cool.
Yeah. Also, like I would do one-on-ones with your engineers. I do a monthly one-on-one with each of the engineers on my team, and I find it super valuable. And you could just ask them directly, what's like one thing I could do better?
Cool. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you all so much for the questions. We will again do Q&A throughout all the workshops, but for now, I'll hand it back over to Lenny to wrap things up.
Oh, wow. Let's see what else we got here. Oh yeah, our homework. Okay, we got some homework. And this shouldn't take you very long. This should take like an hour. And I know you have like 48 hours until the next workshop, so it shouldn't be possible. Yeah, and pretty easy. So there's 3 parts to it. One is I'm going to ask you to study and learn from the best PM that you know. What do they do differently from other product managers? There'll be a lot more detail in the email you get. 2 is I just want you to think about where you fall on the spectrum of empowered versus not. And then there's actually a second element to that. That'll be in the homework. And then I want you to think about what amazing looks like in your role and align with your manager on that, which I'll get into in the homework email. And then there's some more reading that I would love for you to do that builds on what we talked about. And again, our next workshop is communication. We're going to learn a bunch of frameworks and tactical ways to just get better at communicating, which again is the most fundamental skill of PM, in my opinion. And I think there's a feedback survey. I don't know if that's true.
There absolutely is. So you'll see in the chat, there's a link to a feedback survey. We would absolutely love to understand what you loved most about it, what we can improve on. And you'll also see that in your announcements channel in Slack as well. So there's more information there, just kind of summarizing and offering some links of what Lenny just shared.
And just as a quick reminder, sorry, while I'm here, Shreyan's AMA is tomorrow at 6 p.m. EST. This will be recorded and available in your portal for 2 weeks. If you have any questions, please post them in the newly created expert questions channel that Jonah will also post in the announcement Slack channel. So right in the next 5 minutes, you'll see a post in the Slack announcement channel with the feedback survey and the Slack channel for Lenny's questions. Please fill that out and we'll see you on Thursday.
Amazing. Well, thank you, everyone. See you on Thursday. We did it. Workshop 1 complete. Hope you found value. I will see you on Thursday. I'll also be in the Slack, so feel free to DM me if there's anything on your mind that's like top of mind. I'm happy to just like be in there all the time, answer questions. And otherwise, I'll see you on Thursday. Have a good evening / morning for folks that are international.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.